Great. So, hi everybody. I'm Damon. I have a lot of websites, but I'm here from HowEverySupplementWorks.com. Got to do the first official YouTube upload on why every supplement doesn't necessarily work for everybody. Now, it's kind of funny to me that, HowEverySupplementWorks.com should have the first video on why supplements don't give everybody some level of efficaciousness, or rather that they don't work. And I thought that it's a very interesting topic because for my other website, freefitnessinformation.com, I'm also building out a lot of reasons why fitness does and doesn't work for everybody. Someone can do something that just seems absolutely preposterous and they make great results. And this is aside from the argument of performance enhancing drugs and their role into it. But it's very interesting because every body is different, and today I think it's very valuable that we sit down and have that conversation. So right off the rip, I've got Yohimbine HCl. I've got more Yohimbine HCl. I've I've got more Yohimbine HCl. I've got dandelion reduction. If you couldn't tell, I have quite a bit of stuff for getting rid of bloat and helping with reducing down some body fat. Aside from that, I have, there we go, there's something here. Just a vegan multivitamin from Deva, and that's ZMA. That one is a vitamin D3 derived from lichen, and I think that one's a vitamin C. But we have just quite a bit of stuff on hand, and I'll just take a couple as I'm going through or getting ready to go to the gym. Got some Monster Energies just because I like how they taste. Got a ton of protein powders. This is True Nutrition. I'm an affiliate. Don't feel any kind of way about it. I'm not gonna sit here and show for them for 20 minutes. Pre-workout. I've made it a really, really important part of HowEverySupplementWorks.com to have at least tried or be familiar with almost everything that I talk about. I specifically budget out a little bit of money every single month for some of the really niche, obscure ones that can be made vegan to try them and get some insight for everybody and kind of see how it makes me feel. And, I think it's a pretty neat thing. But, why would some supplements work for some people and not for others? So the cascade of effects all happens with ingestion. So we take a supplement, and let's make this pretty easy for ourselves and say L-carnitine, right? Well, L-carnitine is notoriously useless for a lot of people. Now, why is that? It's because it has what's called low oral bioavailability, or you might have 1 gram of L-carnitine by itself, and because of how it is digested and broken down into the body, you only get maybe 8%, if you're real lucky 15%, and if you've got a great ability to process it, about 20%. So what does that realistically mean? So if you can take 10% of the 1 gram that you have, you get 100 milligrams. If you're a poor responder, you get roughly 80 milligrams. And if you have genetically a very good internal system to digest and properly circulate it, you get about 200 milligrams. So it's very easy to see that the effective amount that's realistically working in your body can be highly variable. Now, why is that? There's things like digestion that matters. If you are consuming it and then you're vomiting or you're passing it through your gut because you're unwell, if you have poor digestion in general, you don't have specific colonies, which is important for some other vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. For example, if you have vitamin B12, you need intrinsic factor. As you consume B12, haptocorin, and all these other sort of enzymes bind together, and they help proliferate B12. It goes through your enteric system, and ultimately, when it's in your stomach, you get a result that allows it to be bioavailable. It's why there are vegetarians and vegans that struggle with it. It's also why there are people who eat animal meats that struggle with it, and that's why some people have to even go a step above just the supplementation with something like, fortified multivitamin or vitamin in general for B12. They might have to get an injection, or they might have to get a different form. Instead of cyanocobalamin, maybe they'll do methylcobalamin, or maybe they'll do adenosylcobalamin, or something of the like. And even outside of those factors, another really important point to bring up is the combination of age, weight, the biological sex of an individual, as well as their genetics. So each one of these plays a very significant role, and it's a bit more nebulous with each sort of delineation that's made. So for example, just because one person is 50 and another person is 50 doesn't mean that, well, you're 20 and you're 50, so now this has to be reduced by 50% just to make it easy. Or, well, you're 30 and you're 20, so it's 10% less effective. And you're 20 and you're 80, so it's only 90% effective. All of those are very large generalizations based on standard levels of health within each age group. Now, outside of that, we could look at things like the ability of your stomach to either produce, maybe it's gastrin or pepsin, or to have a specific colony inside your microbiome. You might need to have specific bacteria or maybe enzymes that proliferate from having enough X, Y, and Z, soluble, insoluble fiber, whatever it may be, to help further promote the retention, absorption, and utility of whatever you're supplementing. But even outside of that realm, it's very interesting too to see the factor that weight has into it. The kind of easiest way I think most people generally understand this concept is by making an analogy to alcohol. It's obviously, again, widely variable. You could have someone that's 200 pounds and they get a little tipsy after, consuming a few ounces of liquor, or, you can have somebody that's 95 pounds and can, slam back an entire handle. It's not the best analogy in the world, but it's very easy to imagine that somebody, if they are much smaller and lighter, might have more pronounced effects as a result of their smaller stature. And consequently, the same thing can be said for supplementation. A great example of this would be something like creatine monohydrate. So if you are a relatively large individual with a much wider frame due to heavily muscular features, you would likely require more creatine to notice an ergogenic benefit, as opposed to someone who's a little bit daintier, a little smaller, weighs a lot less. They would require much less creatine to notice things like an increase in their output, whether that be strength or their ability to sprint, or even muscular fullness or weight gain as a percentage. So we can sort of see that sliding scale is highly variable based on those factors. But alongside of that as well, there's a very complex role that are played with hormones. Now, typically in literature, we find that testosterone is the virilizing hormone, and as a result, it's considered to be the male hormone, and estrogen produces more feminizing effects. It is the totality in difference from the effects seen from androgens, and it's typically sexed as the female hormone. Just a quick tangent behind that. Women make testosterone through their ovarian helix cells, as well as some adrenal androgens. There's DHEA and androstenedione and a whole sort of cascade of androgens that they produce as well. And men also will create estrogen through the aromatization of their testosterone that's being produced from their natural system, from their hypothalamus, pituitary, and gonadal axis. So both hormones are incredibly important for either end of the spectrum, but there is sort of a complex interplay between dosage gradients and supplements and gender, or I prefer to sort of delineate based on the sex. Gender is much more variable, and I think that it's very easy to kind of just delineate between two sexes, as gender is infinite on a spectrum. And we can find that with certain supplementation, it's much easier to see quicker, more pronounced results for again, just to make it a little bit easier, the aforementioned L-carnitine, doing an injectable route for, let's say, a bikini competitor or somebody who's looking to get an athletic performance from the nutrient partitioning or shuttling as a result of the injection of L-carnitine would be much lower than the male counterpart. Now, that's for a multitude of reasons. Now, normatively speaking, it would be from the differences in both height and weight, but even outside of that, the facilitation of its effects are much more pronounced in female affirmed individuals, as opposed to someone who's characteristically more masculine and male. They find that their dose gradient is much higher, and that's when they start to see much better results as a result of its introduction. Now, even outside of things like muscularity and sex and age, and even outside of issues with one's gastrointestinal health, there's an incredibly important factor that's really sparked my sort of necessity for the video, and that would be genetics. And very recently, maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, I went through a lot of articles that sort of touched very briefly on the idea of sort of sequencing someone's genome or going through somebody's genetics and really finding a way to give the most personalized nutrition plan that would be highly effective for them. Now, personally, I think that that would be superb. I don't think we could get much better than that. For example, if someone has an MTHFR 577A, I think is the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase enzyme that is, I want to say it's homozygous for the complications with methylation for folate, and as a result, they might not fare well with folate, folic acid, and require L5-MTHF, which is L5 methyl tetrahydrofolate, which is the most bioactive, bioavailable, bioidentical, basically meaning it's the most realistically utilized, understood, replicated, and usable form of the supplement that we can get. And for someone to have that deficiency and to be aware of it, then they may need something like methyl donors, or if someone's going to be taking creatine and adding in betaine and making sure that they have enough folate or L5-MTHF, as well as some peripheral things like zinc and a sufficient amount of copper, with tandem utility of other B vitamins and anti-inflammatory markers to make sure that that whole picture is very well enveloped and going to largely be much more sustainable for them to use. It sort of stands the reason that the best that we can get, other than doing just what we're doing, and then as a consequence of that, getting our blood work circling back to square one, sort of finding these areas of deficiency and then addressing them as we find them over time, that the utility of our genes being a level of practical application into this equation could then help us sort of circumvent that entirely and get right to the sort of carrots and potatoes of our issues, where we can reasonably say, hey, you have this gene, this gene, this gene, this gene, and this gene. You're going to have issues with the conversion of omegas, as well as the ability for you to effectively process B12 and also folate. And, if you don't want megaloblastic anemia, or if you don't want to maybe have something very similar masking that, or if you don't want to have a higher level of inflammation score that could lead to years off of your life due to cardiac health concerns, maybe take this supplement and work with that, and the reduction of plaque and your cholesterol values and your HDL, LDL, VLDL, lipoprotein A. You can do all these sorts of things and incorporate a generally more healthy lifestyle and make sure that you're getting these vitamins and these minerals and these nutrients to help supplicate the potential offshoots that you have for that. And I don't think that this quick little 15-minute blurb is really going to paint it any level of justice, but I hope you guys can at least draw from this that it's a highly complex and multifaceted issue, but it's also not for nothing. It's not like every single supplement in the world just doesn't work and they're all meant to be big money grabs by big supplement company world thingy. A lot of them are over marketed and overhyped, and there's a lot of claims that are being made which shouldn't be being made. My gosh, what is it? I think I literally have it on one of these things, so let me get one of these real quick. Yeah. So vitamins and supplements are not made to they're not made to cure, prevent, or treat any illnesses at all. So, if they're promising to cure COVID or reverse X, Y, and Z, or to instead make it so you can't blah, 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 or it will blah, 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 those are health claims, and those would then not fall into the category of a dietary supplement. That would then need to be more stringent or be heavily scrutinized, and the acceptable verbiage that would be on the package. For example, just look at the sheer level of language used when good source versus great source of X, Y, and Z is utilized by the Food and Drug Administration for the United States of America. It has to be standardized to a certain percent so that the public can make an informed decision on a decent referential range. If that's not being adhered to, then there's a whole series of problems that supplement company and the distributors will then face with their product. Most often a recall, but if not being retracted afterwards, there are some serious legal complications to arise, and the ramifications are not so very nice. And it's just important, I think, for people to have a sort of realistic expectation. Supplements can do great things. incredible in terms of bolstering athletic performance in my experience. I quite liked the utility of L-carnitine as an introduction into when I was much more involved in the whole physique athlete, like wanting to be a bodybuilder thing. And even outside of that, I mean, I like fasted cardio with quite a lot of yohimbine. It's something that I can feel, and even if it is only negligible, I've still found ways to make this supplement that seemingly doesn't work for a lot of people work well for me. I take it fasted. I don't have anything that spikes my insulin to make the active ingredient inert, and I feel like it works for me. And at the end of the day, if I can deem something to be non-consequential in my financial picture, and it either gives me additional motivation or I have this sort of perceived benefit that makes me want to work harder and to effectively utilize it, then it's good in my books. And I think that that's more than a valid reason to actually use it. So I just wanted to very quickly, riff on that subject. I'm not going to give you guys a 30-minute video on that, but I just thought it would be kind of helpful to, kind of come on here and yap a little bit at y'all and kind of give you that sort of insight. If you guys have any questions, please drop them in the comment section below. I will monitor these comment sections. I'm also going to be on Spotify, and some stuff will be going up on the website. It's mostly just currently supplement profiles, and very later down the line, once all of them are indexed and all of them have affiliate links and all of them have everything built out to, one, help me incur my time back, and maybe if somebody is very interested in the supplement after the review, they can purchase it and I get a very meager affiliate commission as a result. But then once I have everything interlinked and there's information about it, then we'll be going into stacks or what people typically utilize these things for, and we can address them holistically in terms of synergies. So hope you guys have learned something today. If you have, that's fantastic. Feel free to let me know. If there's a supplement or a conversation or topic that you guys want me to talk about, please feel free to let me know. You can email me, Damon@HowEverySupplementWorks.com, or just drop it in the YouTube's comment section. Either or works perfectly well for me. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. It extends in your week, and that you guys all make good choices. So have a fantastic night, and I will see you guys in the next one. Toodles. Bye.